يا راغبا في كل علم نافع.
ينمو العلم ويتقدم بتقنياته ومجالاته، ومعه نطور أدواتنا في تقديم العلم الشرعي. أكاديمية
زاد أكاديمية ينبوعها صاف ليروي غلة الظمآن. هذه عقيدتنا الصحيحة فطرة تنفي الشكوك بواضح البرهان. بشرى لنا زاد أكاديمية للعلم كالأزهار في البستان.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Continuing with the subject of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islamic Creed level 2. And this subject of the names and attributes of Allah caused to those who deviated from the way of the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah confusion. They brought it to themselves. Why? When they introduced things to the deen of Allah that wasn't introduced at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were not upon it, especially with ilmul kalam, the philosophy that is of no benefit whatsoever, the part that is of no benefit in it whatsoever, where words would lead to other words, and people talk about the unseen with since, therefore, if it's correct to say, trying to make analogy based on what they see with their own eyes in this life, which is not permissible. When you talk about the unseen, it's unseen. How can you make analogy to something that is unseen? So that's why the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them. Why? Because they followed the way of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the early generations of Islam, following the text, the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it's a matter of unseen, that means we've never seen it before. No one's seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not to happen in this life, but it's in the hereafter. So as a result of that, the only way for us to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the revelation from Allah. And the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clearly stated, talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, it is not permissible for someone to add anything, to take in anything, to alter things, to deny things when it's affirmed and so on. So therefore, one of the things that the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah were upon when it comes to believing in these attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to, as we heard, to establish them, to believe in them the way it is in the Quran and in the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they understand the meanings of it clearly. And you know how the Quran was revealed at a time when the Arabic language had reached its peak, and how the people, they understood the book of Allah. If the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they didn't ask questions about certain things, they understood the meanings of it. And they were the smartest people, the purest of all human beings. So to put ourselves in the right position, and that is to understand this point very well, and even though it's mentioned before, but to make sure that we repeat this meaning, there is the subject called at-tafweed, as we talked about it before. And at-tafweed is when you say, فَوَضْتُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. That means I make my affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have no say in it whatsoever. So when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah, we say that when it comes to the kayf of how these attributes are. We say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, we don't know it. Not that does not have a kayf, not that the names and attributes of Allah doesn't have a how. It does have, but we don't know it. There's no revelation that is given to us in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that describes that. And because that is beyond our capacity in this life that we live on the face of earth, and there's no need of it in this life. And we are slaves of Allah. We take whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, and this is what we are pleased with, and we don't go beyond that. So going back again to the subject of at-tafweed, what is the tafweed of the people of Ahl Sunnah that they make? They make tafweed, or they say Allah knows best, meaning we don't have the knowledge of it, in the kayf, in the kayfiyya, in how things are, how the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are. but they do not make tafweed in the ma'na, in the meanings of the names and attributes of Allah. They don't say Allah knows best what as-sami' means. Allah knows best everything. But we know that as-sami' means the all-hearer, comes from hearing, and nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How the hearing is, Allah knows best. We make tafweed in how things are. But the meaning of it, as-sam' is an Arabic word that refers to hearing. Al-ilm, the knowledge, is an Arabic word that means knowledge. And nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ar-Rahma, Ar-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. And this is an Arabic word that is clear. And the Quran was revealed بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ, with a clear Arabic tongue, language. The Sahaba, the early generations of Islam, they understood it very well. If there's a word that they don't understand the meaning of it, they would go to the Prophet ﷺ and they would ask him. And the Prophet ﷺ would correct them. So they understood the meaning of it. But how, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And follow the same pattern, the same way. The hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, we do not know how, but we know the meanings of a hand. So the meaning of a hand is clear, the meaning, not similarities. Not that you know the hands of the human beings or the hands of this. No, you know what the word yad means. You know the meaning of the word qadam or foot. You know these things. Eyes. If it's mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we believe in it. You know the meaning of the word yuhib, loves, al-mahabba, and things like this. Don't alter the meanings, but when it comes to the tafweed, we make the tafweed in the kayf, in the how of things are. And I would repeat this over and over again because we need to make sure that we are consistent. We should memorize and remember always that statement of Imam Malik rahimahullah when he was asked about al-istiwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rose over his throne. He said what we need to apply in every attribute of Allah, which is al-istiwa'u ma'loom. Rose over his throne is known. Ma'loom, that means we know it. It's knowledge. We get to know it. We understand the meanings of it. Linguistically, it's very clear. Wal-kayfu majhul. And how it is, majhul, that means is the opposite of ma'loom. That means we don't know it. That's what majhul versus ma'loom. So for those who say that we don't know the meaning of al-istiwa, what do you mean by this? It's already known, it's in Arabic known. Al-kayf, how al-istiwa is majhul, we do not know. Wal-imanu bihi wajib, and to believe in it is wajib, is obligatory because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it in the Quran. وَالسُّؤَالُ عَنْهُ بِدْعَةً, and to ask about it is bid'ah, the essence of it. So this is the perfect way to deal with all of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Apply that in every name and attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be safe. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and they were the best of this ummah in everything. And one of which is they were the best in seeking knowledge. And they didn't ask about al-kayfiyah. They didn't ask about how. And that's the same thing when it comes to when we ask about things. If the Sahaba radiallahu anhum didn't ask about it, why should we ask? Even that becomes a way of life of understanding the deen. And sometimes people ask, what is the wife of Iblis? As one of the early generations of Islam, someone asked him this question. He said, this is a wedding that we did not attend. What's the benefit of this question? No one asked this question. Is there a benefit? Is there action to be built as a result of this? And if it was benefiting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have mentioned it. Right? How much count-wise the wealth of Qarun? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us what is sufficient for us. That the wealth of Qarun, the keys of it, the keys of his treasures, the strong men, was difficult for them to carry. So that's sufficient for us. So there's no need for us to go beyond that. Right? And this is, of course, in matters of aqeedah, in matters of unseen, this is a definite thing. This is something that has to be done with very strong attitude to make sure that we are upon the truth. So this is subject that has to be clear because it's some people, they confuse the matter to someone. They will claim that the people of Ahl Sunnah, they make tafweed in the meanings. The Sahaba, they would never do such a thing. And whoever says this, they are lying about the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. They understood the words very well. But they made the tafweed of how things are. Allah knows best how. And for those who claim that, like the Ash'aris and the like of them, they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being as-Sami' al-Basir. For example, so you're saying as-Sami', He is the all-hearer subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is this attribute ma'loom or majhul? Ma'loom meaning known in the meanings of it. You know what as-Sami' means, the all-hearer. So doesn't the human being hear also? They do hear. But you would say nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sure, that's what brings us all together at all times. Nothing is the like of Allah, but you won't deny the attribute. So the same thing with al-yad, with the hands, with al-istiwa. The matter is the same. So that should not something that would have any doubts in the hearts of the believers, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all deviations. So we'll stop here inshallah ta'ala, and we continue with more of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala next time. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
يا راغبا في كل علم نافع
ينمو العلم ويتقدم بتقنياته ومجالاته، ومعه نطور أدواتنا في تقديم العلم الشرعي. أكاديمية
زاد أكاديمية ينبوعها صاف ليروي غلة الظمآن. هذه عقيدتنا الصحيحة فطرة تنفي الشكوك بواضح البرهان. بشرى لنا زاد أكاديمية للعلم كالأزهار في البستان.